In a day and age where everybody thinks that artists are performative and faking positivity, Hayley Williams in Paramore is a rare exception. Whether you grew up in Memphis, Tennessee or Bellevue, Nebraska, almost everybody can agree that they like a song from Paramore.
As we all know, I'm a huge Paramore fan.
In today's video, I want to talk about being authentic and why everyone loves Paramore. I hope you enjoy the video.
I was like, oh no,
Yeah.
this is the most diverse crowd I've probably ever seen at a rock concert.
That's so cool.
Before we start, don't worry. It's not just a baseless opinion. I have data and I have charts. I hate when people make videos and they don't include any evidence of what they're talking about. They just be yapping.
Where did you get these facts?
But the reason I wanted to do this video is because I feel like there's so much negativity in the air and it's very rare that people talk about things that they like. And so today I want to take the time and talk about a band that I like and why I like them. My first memories of Paramore is kind of fuzzy. I don't know. For some reason, my childhood is all a blur. But a thing I do remember around 2009 is I really like the album Riot. One of the reasons is I think that the album cover is really cool. But the second reason is I actually got into the music because of Dragon Ball AMV. For people who don't know what AMVs are, they're anime music videos. I think the video that I saw is probably deleted by now, probably because of copyright or something. But back in the day, this is how people would get into different genres of music. You would type in on YouTube, Dragon Ball Z, it would be the most popular result, anime music video. And so you got introduced to these new genres of music or these new artists and bands that you never heard of and you would have never even knew about just because of an anime music video. So I remember listening to Paramore from this and then going on a deep dive and actually liking their music. Everybody knows Misery Business, but my favorite song is actually Pressure. And I think I actually heard Pressure from an anime music video. But the reason I went on that tangent about anime music videos is because that's one of the reasons that Paramore is popular. So with a lot of other bands. Back in the day before we were algorithmically siloed into our own separate genres, there's a lot more variation or ways to see new things or experience new things. But a lot of people or a lot of bands are only popular in certain parts of this country because of anime. Another entry point for people is actually Twilight. Decode was really popular. It was part of the soundtrack. So Paramore, people who, they kind of had two big break-off moments. I guess one in 2007 and then again in 2010 because of Twilight. And then I guess, I don't know what album broke them out. I'm not that big of a fan. I won't pretend to be. That will be relevant later. Another entry point was doing collabs with other artists. Another one was gaming. A lot of people only heard of B.O.B. or other artists because they were in a gaming soundtrack and they couldn't just at the time you didn't really have a separate way to play music. It wasn't until around 2011 where you could actually play music separately playing a game. Most people didn't have the ability to do so. So whatever they put into the game soundtrack, you would listen and you'd be like, oh, that's a cool song. That's a cool band. I'm going to go look them up. And so Paramore and these other musicians at that time really benefited from all these cultural entry points that people could just stumble into and become a fan of them. But that doesn't really exist anymore. And the biggest one that I don't think exists anymore is the collaboration or the cross-genre collaboration. Say that 30 times. If you were somebody who only listened to Southern rap artists or Southern rap in general, you wouldn't have known who Paramore was until Airplanes came out and it became a #1 hit.
Do you think that the amount of space we decided we were okay taking up and the places we were okay showing up in just let different people that hadn't really been privy to what we were doing or what we were about feel maybe a little bit more welcome to come into the show? And then,
have you ever heard Airplanes by B.O.B.? I'm on that. That's me. A lot of people still don't realize that that's me.
Hayley Williams has a lot of fans because of that B.O.B. song with Airplanes. This actually gets to Drake. We'll talk about this later when I bring up the charts and stuff. A lot of artists collabed with Drake, not because they even liked him, because he was a gateway to other audiences. And you might be thinking, no, collabs are still happening. That's stupid. But while collabs are still happening, this cross-genre collabs aren't happening as much. Here's some evidence of this. If you look at the Billboard 100, the top 10 songs in 2011, 2012, 2013, there are people who you would classify as different genres. So Katy Perry doing a song with Kanye West. That's unheard of. That doesn't really happen nowadays. Taylor Swift and Kendrick Lamar. Kendrick Lamar and Imagine Dragons. These cross collaborations, I don't know why all my words are rhyming today, don't really happen anymore. And here, and if you look at 2020, 2021, 2022, they're really, the top 10 songs are not a broad audience. They're kind of siloed in. And I think it's more evidence of us becoming more siloed into our own playlist, to our own music. We don't really experience different music music, different genres of music. I think that's partially because of the recommendation algorithms for TikTok. For example, TikTok knows that I'm a black man, so whenever I create a new account, it almost immediately just starts sending me drama about rappers between each other. Even though I listen to like almost every genre of music, including country, it doesn't really pick up on that unless like I force it to. What is Hayley Williams' new song about on her solo album that she just released? Like, what is that about? And then that's how I'll get introduced to it. But if you don't go out of your way or like actively try to get new music, you're not going to really experience what else there is to offer. As these cultural entry points have lessened and lessened and lessened, I feel like we are becoming more divided in the music that people listen to. I think that's probably a bad thing. If you go back in a day, I don't like to bring up economics, but even if you get into the economics of music, the music industry has changed. It has become more specialized, just how our regular labor economy has become specialized. So as music, as more and more musicians came onto the scene, musicians learned that they had to specialize and to really target down onto who their audience is and become niche so they could make money and be affordable. There's a whole like economics theory of music, our modern music scene, but it's a whole different conversation for a different day.
The algorithm has meant that the ubiquitous superstar is kind of gone.
The way that the algorithm is set up, no one can serve the masses anymore.
It's interesting to hear this conversation from an artist who has had such ubiquitous pop hits, because it is true when we're talking about this conversation about there is no song of the summer. That's because people experience and they digest culture so differently right now because of the algorithm. I mean, I put up a video saying that the song of the summer, as declared by Billboard, was pretty unanimously Alex Warren's Ordinary, which has spent several weeks at number one. It's one of the longest running, if not the longest running number one of the year so far, and has been absolutely huge, a massive hit on radio. And yet so many people commented and said that they've never heard this song before. And that's because we live in our own bubbles where the algorithm has become so good and so tied to what you are interested in that everything else that exists outside does not enter it. And that's
because our media environments are so fractured and we all live in our algorithmic bubbles, it's getting harder and harder to reach different cultures, to reach different audiences. And yet Hayley Williams still does. And that's because she puts in the effort. She shows up to a podcast that her black fans are doing. She brings Stephen Curry onto a show at a concert. She tries to bring people together in a concert experience because that is her vision as an artist. And other artists just don't want to because they don't really care to do so.
I don't know. I think music is the kind of the not only the easiest, but the most beautiful way to tap into people's hearts and their subconscious and change their minds and have people show up to a show and stand next to someone that they may never see again, but they're going to share this really wholesome, cathartic moment. You know, that's the kind of shows I want to be at.
Back to what I was saying about cultural entry points, though. None of that really matters if you're not authentic. And in my opinion, that's really where Paramore shines. And I think that's one of the biggest reasons that they're so popular. People introduced to them, and when they're introduced to them, they could tell that their music is real and authentic, and they actually want to create music that they themselves enjoy. When I listen to Ain't It Fun, I can hear the gospels underneath it. I can hear inspirations from black music. When I listen to Party in the USA, I don't really hear that at all. And in fact, if you go and look up an interview, Miley Cyrus didn't even know who Jay-Z was. And in her own words, she only created the song because she was selling a clothing line and she had to have a lyric that fit so she could sell the clothing line. She didn't even write the song herself.
I have no idea. I didn't write it.
I think that's a really good contrast because you have Miley saying she doesn't know who Jay-Z is, and then 3 years later, she's wearing Jordans with a Michael Jordan jersey and talking about how she loves rap music. You can kind of hear it in the music, or at least subconsciously, this person doesn't really like rap music that way, which is perfectly fine. Everybody does not have to like rap music, which that's fine. But pretending, and this is my biggest beef with it, pretending that you like music because you know that it'll sell more, a really bad thing. I do not have a problem if people do rap music or take inspiration from black music. What I have a problem with is that you clearly don't like it and you're clearly just using it for a brand. Paramore is really heavily inspired from Southern black music. And some of their songs, I won't say all, that'd be insane. Some of their songs are really inspired, but they don't change the way she looks. Paramore looks like Paramore. That's their identity. That's their brand. They're not out here with Jordans on. What's the latest style? And True Religion. It's not, none of that. It's just, they are who they are. And I love that. Be who you are, take inspirations from other people's genres and really own it if you like it. Another person, and this is to push back against the narrative that black people don't listen to other genres of music, because that's a weird narrative I see online. According to this chart in the demographic data, Adele is more popular in majority black counties than some black artists. I think Adele is more popular in some black counties than J. Cole, than Big Sean. And there's problems with these charts. For example, they were made in 2017, so a lot of it will probably be outdated. And who your fan base is changes a lot. So when this was made in 2017, Lemonade was out, so Beyonce's fan base would be slightly different now that Cowboy Carter is out. It might appeal to different people. But back to Adele, when I listen to Adele, I hear influences in her music, and I never think that she is trying or she's lying about who she is. I just hear somebody who's inspired, who really likes the music and made their own thing. And I think that's the biggest problem for me, and I'm not going to speak for everyone, but for me specifically, is I can tell that you really don't like black music, which is fine. That's, everybody can have their opinion. But stop trying to pretend that you do. Like Miley Cyrus, you never listen to Jay-Z. Like if I was her, I'd be like, no, I'm not going to put that in my song. It's supposed to be authentic. If you broke up with someone like that, you feel that in the music, right? If you really like black music, you can name who Jay-Z is. When you listen to interviews from Paramore or even Adele, they can tell you a story like, yo, I used to go to a black church and I was like, oh my God, this music is amazing. And then I incorporated that into our music. And, there's this whole thing. And it's like, oh, that's cool. That story's cool. Like, thank you for sharing.
It was really, he loved Motown and he loved gospel. So I feel like I got a nice education at home from that. And then I started singing with a friend and we went around to some different churches in town and we sang at a couple churches that were predominantly, if not entirely, black.
But then you have other artists. Like, how did you develop the sound? Because every musician has to develop the way that they sing, the way that they play the guitar. There are styles in music. How did you come up? And they can't answer that because they didn't. And I think that's why Paramore reaches so many people, is because they're a Southern group who respects other people's cultures and integrates it into their music, and they make it lovely and it sounds nice, and you can really appreciate that when you're listening to it. I don't like the Ragers album by Miley. I like Miley's country music the most because that's truly, I don't know if this is authentic to her, but it sounds the most authentic to her. Going back to the Airplane song, Hayley Williams was trying to do that song with Lupe Fiasco. You have to have an appreciation for black music to know who Lupe Fiasco is. That's not just like a name that people can pull out of a hat. You know what I'm saying? She can name, but she was a fan of Doechii before she was big.
When that song belonged to Lupe Fiasco. So I was like backstage at, I want to say Hammerstein Ballroom, and someone from the label comes up and is like, would you ever do a feature on like a hip hop record? And I was like, duh. To be one of those voices, it's in the chorus of a rap song. Absolutely, the life goal. I was really pumped to get to collaborate with Lupe because I really, really love his music. And then like mere weeks before it came out, they were like, just kidding. We gave it to this new kid out of Atlanta, and then the song like blew up.
My point is that like when you like something, you can communicate about it. It doesn't mean like you're the biggest fan. Like I'm a fan of Paramore. I'm not the biggest fan. I listen to rap music. I listen to rock music. I listen to country. I have a conversation with you about it. I might not be the most in detail, but I can at least have a conversation. With a lot of the artists that are coming up, you can tell that they don't really know anything that they're talking about. So this gets to the conversation I was having about Drake. And one of the biggest critiques about Drake is that he steals from other cultures. He's a culture vulture. He goes to whatever is popular. He doesn't even really like it. He just wants to make as much money as possible by diversifying his fan base and quote unquote stealing from other musicians or sounds, right? That's one of the biggest critiques of Drake. But that critique is never given on the opposite way or the opposite direction. And what I mean by that is there are plenty of rappers and musicians and artists who do not like Drake on a personal level, but use him to get to North Dakota or South Dakota or Kansas. These places where rap music is normally not played, where they would have little to no reach or audience, they use Drake as a way to get, as a gateway almost, to get to those places, right? And nobody really has a problem with this. It's kind of accepted or subconsciously accepted, and nobody really cares. But it's incredibly weird to me on like foundational level. And rappers are not the only people who do this. And the reason I bring this up is because there's an authenticity problem in music. There are people who are pretending to like anime. They're pretending to like country music. There are people who are pretending to be country when they live in a loft in New York and have never went out into the country or rural areas of America. And they're just doing that to maximize sales and profits. And you can tell in the music, it doesn't sound like you want to be there. It doesn't sound like you actually want to do a song with Drake. It sounds boring. It sounds like uninspired. And that's because it's not authentic. You don't really care about it, right? Paramore and Hayley Williams don't have this problem, and people resonate with their music and like can feel their music and feel the emotion in it because for example, Uzi wanted to do a song with Hayley Williams. For those who don't know, Uzi is a popular rap artist in the South. He wanted to do a song with Hayley, and she was like, no, I don't want to be that famous, right? they almost got a song, and I think this is after Twilight. They almost did a song for Jennifer's Body. That would have been a huge moment for them. That would have been a huge another cultural entry point for people who did not know Paramore. And guess what? They turned it down because one of the band members had like a moral conflict with the movie. And that's fine, and that's perfectly fine. You know, they discussed that as a group, but that is authentic, right? Turning down music opportunities, turning down placements for your music to be heard by millions of people because you have standards, you have ethics, you have a thing that you go by, right? That's what I like to see in my music. And I think goes into the music. You can tell when somebody really what they're singing, like they're passionate about. You can tell. And when it becomes apparent to you that you've been lied to, that these people don't really like the music that they say, they don't really like anime music, they're not even country, they don't even like to go outside, you kind of feel betrayed. You kind of feel like you wasted your time listening to them because it's an important aspect to music. The essence of being authentic or being true to your brand is such a powerful thing that it even scares artists and creative people and musicians who are authentic, right? For the longest time, Hayley Williams didn't talk about her upbringing or talk about the influences of black music because she didn't want to seem fake, like she was just saying it to get a black audience. It's the same thing with anime. There are a lot of creators or famous rappers who are the biggest anime fans, but they don't talk about it because, you know, it just looks like you're just trying to be cool or trying to fit in with a crowd to get them to listen to your music or watch your movie.
I really think that it would have made me nervous, feel like, oh, I can go and talk about I can go and do a podcast called Black People of Paramore, and I can go and talk about black culture. And when I'm not black, I think I've always been really, really sensitive to the fact that I'm not trying to, you know, rise up and look like some sort of, you know, I'm not trying to make a show of it. And that's the line that I think is important to be aware of, because I want to, you know, it's fun for me to talk about a part of my life.
Funny part, the ironic part, a lot of modern music is based off of anime instrumentals or video game instrumentals, but nobody really talks about it because they don't want to seem inauthentic or fake. Which is kind of crazy when you think about it. You know, the people who are making those instrumentals or beats, or even the rappers or musicians themselves, are really big fans of some of the most popular anime or some of the most niche anime. And you would never know unless you pick out the sample and you're a fan of it too. And the reason that they don't say like publicly, like, yo, I love this and this and this, is because they don't want to seem inauthentic. They don't want to seem like, I guess for lack of a better word, a poser. Like, oh, I'm just saying this because I want you to listen to my music, you know? But that trend of authenticity seems like it's going out, like, because a lot of artists nowadays I don't think really even care about that, and that they're putting on this aesthetic because labels understand that that's what sells. You know, it's not just the music anymore, it's also the aesthetic, what you look like, what you dress like, what games you even play. Like, it's all manufactured, and it's just sick and tiring. But Paramore is not. That's why I love them. Anyway, I hope you enjoy the video. Click here for the next one. Have a great day. Peace.